So very good morning to all of you. I hope everyone is doing well. And I welcome you all to today's class. This is part 2 of your chapter 2, residence and scope of total income. In the previous class, we discussed about the residential status and the scope of total income as per the residential status. Today, we will dug deep into understanding the two terms which we saw in scope of total income: income received or deemed to be received, and income accrued or deemed to be accrued. Along with that, we'll do more of the questions which are there in your study material. Plus, if you have any doubts, we would be very happy to entertain. So I'll give you time to settle in and then we'll start quickly. Meanwhile, if you have any doubts, please feel free to write in your query box. Very good morning, Bhumika, Kiran, Darshan, Noor, Diksha, and all of you. A very good morning. I hope you attempted the questions which were given as a homework in the previous class. Illustration number 2 and illustration number 5 में. Illustration 2 में क्या प्रॉब्लम है? Point C. Okay. So for illustration 5, we'll do all the questions for regarding scope of total income. Once we cover today's topic, wherever you have doubt, you can point it out. For illustration 2, part 3, I'll quickly explain. One second. Srinath wala point, right? Yes, Kavita, deemed residents are always your RNOR. You're very correct. Bhumika, is it the Srinath one? Okay, so let's quickly discuss this question of Srinath. Now, Srinath is our person who's an Indian citizen. So, Indian citizen के case में, when they are staying abroad and then they come to visits in India, there can be two situations which would depend upon the income. If the income is more than 15 lakhs, and income related to what? Income related to Indian source, or technically speaking, we should write in income other than income from foreign sources. Okay? Or the income is less than 15 lakhs, correct? These two can be the situation if an Indian citizen is coming to visits in India. If it's less than 15 lakhs, then we check only one condition, which is of 182 days. If that is being fulfilled, the person becomes resident. Otherwise, he becomes non-resident, right? So, यहाँ पे अब income के बारे में नहीं दिया. So, students make one thing habit. If the question is silent about anything and you have to make an assumption out of it, always write about your assumption that you have assumed this. If it's a question whereby you can give both the scenarios, then give both the scenarios. Otherwise, always write your assumption that we are assuming that so and so person is this. Like when you have to calculate tax rates or the tax amount, you write we are assuming the person is a individual less than 60 years old. So besides this, just a general practice, whenever you have to attempt exams, always make an habit to write assumptions. Now, in this case, we have not given anything about his income. So we'll write either both of it, or we'll say we are assuming his income is less than 15 lakhs. It's a small question, so we can write if Srinath's income is less than 15 lakhs, you will not use the word only income, you'll write income other than foreign sources income is less than 15 lakhs. He would become non-resident because his stay in during the year is less than 120 days. Okay. But if Srinath's income is more than 15 lakhs, then what will happen? We have to check at least 120 days in the current previous year. And at the same time, 365 days or more in the preceding year. या 182 days. एक तो जनरल कंडीशन तो है ही है, उसके साथ 60 days is replaced by 120 days, so we have to check that condition when the Indian income is more than 15 lakhs. So 182 days condition is not getting fulfilled. 120 days condition is getting fulfilled because 120 days in the current previous year and 100 days every year, that makes it to 120 days every year, that makes to 480 days in the 4 preceding years. So that means Mr. Srinath is a resident. Now a question comes whether he's a ROR or RNOR. I told you whenever a person qualifies to be a resident who is an Indian citizen with an income of more than 15 lakhs, because of this condition, he automatically always becomes an RNOR. Right? So this is the case, and that's why Srinath, if he's in India for 120 days every year and his income is more than 15 lakhs, he would be an RNOR. If his income is less than 15 lakhs, he would be a non-resident. Got it? यहाँ पे किसी को कोई डाउट? Sure. Ishan, I think I addressed that in the previous class, that different special rates to remember, you would get to know whenever these chapters are done. Okay, so you don't have to remember all at one go. Just remember the concept when there is a special rate income. Special rate income would be taxed as special rate, and other income would be taxed as per slab rates if we are talking about individual, HUF, AOP, BOIs. If you're talking about firms and companies, then at the flat rate applicable to them. And other things I'll take at the end of the class. Okay. So now to the concept today. बहुत ध्यान से समझना, बहुत प्यारा कॉन्सेप्ट है. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, so in the previous class, we ended on understanding the scope of total income basis the residential status. So if a person is an ROR, in case of individual, HUF, AOPs, in case of individual and HUF, or in case of other people or other person, it's a resident, then the global income is taxed. Global income means that wherever it is accrued during the year or wherever it is received during the year, every income would be taxed. So you cannot say that it is being accrued outside, received outside, we cannot tax it. First, prima facie, all the incomes of an ROR are subject to Indian tax. For an RNOR and non-resident, only income which is, so थोड़ा सा clean कर देते हैं. Yeah. Only income which is received or deemed to be received or accrued or deemed to be accrued in India during the previous year would be taxed in the hands of RNOR and NR. But then you will ask, ma'am, what is the difference from taxability point of view for an RNOR and NR? RNOR में एक और additional income आ जाता है for any businesses which are controlled from India. So prima facie, if you see that they are the income is generated outside India, but since the business is controlled from India, uska income would also be part of the RNOR taxability. Or uska income would also be part of the income in the hands of RNOR. Okay, so scope of income is all clear. But today we are going to focus on the term of deeming provisions. What is deeming provision? So income tax may you will see very at number of places where this deemed word is used, like deemed ownership, deemed resident, which we saw, deemed income, deemed dividend. ये सब क्या है? So the term deemed means that again, prima facie it does not look it is, but it would be assumed to be, or it would be taken to be, or it would be presumed to be a part of it. So if I talk about deemed resident, what does that mean? That वैसे वो कहीं का resident नहीं है. As per the section 6(1), that person is not becoming a resident at all, but we will deem him. We will presume him to be a resident. Similarly, income deemed to be received मतलब ऐसे आपको लग रहा है कि वो receive नहीं हुई. It is appearing that it is not received, but it would be deemed to be received. And the moment it is deemed to be received, that means it would be deemed to be, it would be taxable. Similarly, income accruing or arising or deeming to accrue or arise in India. So income accruing means that income is generated, income is sourced in India, and deemed to accrue or arise in India मतलब आपको ऐसा लग रहा है because of the transactions which are happening that it has not accrued in India. Parties are outside, agreements are outside. तो आपको लग रहा है कि it is not getting accrued मतलब not getting generated in India. But because of these provisions, it would be presumed that the income is generated in India. So पहले deeming word का मतलब समझना, because you people are just starting your taxation journey. This is very important. So received and deemed to be received, and accrued and deemed to be accrued. Deemed to be received provisions are taken up in section 7. And deemed to be accrued provisions are taken up in section 8. Section 9. All these section 9 के terms which we'll be learning today are extremely important from perspective of making a base of taxation understanding. तो चले आगे. Yes, Goma, if a person is other than individual and HUF, then he obviously they are not further classified as ROR and RNOR. Their taxability or the scope would be same as in ROR. Okay, perfect. So, first of all, we'll come to deemed to be received. Ab ye received ka I told you. What do you mean by received? When at the first instance you are receiving it. So if you're receiving something in your foreign account and then you are transferring it to your Indian account, that is limiting in your Indian account, would not be considered as deemed, would not be considered as received in India. Received मतलब first instance में आपको कहाँ मिल रहा है, right? Now, deemed to be received provisions are such, and you have to promise me right now, guys, that once your salary chapter is done, you will revisit section 7. अब you will say, ma'am, why are you saying so? Because अभी यहाँ पे जो terms है ना, वो most of you, if you're not taking the classes anywhere, you must have not heard about it. And with due respect of, again, doing the things as per the fresh slate, I will just give you an understanding what does these mean. Once you understand the provisions related to salary, the terms related to salary, and you revisit this chapter, you'll get to know what I was trying to explain. ठीक है. So if you do not have a clear idea by section 7, do not worry. You will definitely get a clear idea once you get through your salary chapter. So income deemed to be received का मतलब मिला नहीं है, but ऐसा माना जाएगा कि मिला है. It is not received, but it would be considered that it is being received. Now, what are those provisions? So there are three things which are said to be deemed to be received. And once they are deemed to be received, they become taxable. One is if the employer makes contribution in excess of 20% of salary to your provident fund account. What is a provident fund account? It's a retirement saving fund जहाँ पे employer and employee makes a contribution. So if an employer is making a contribution above a certain limit, 12% से ज्यादा अगर वो करते हैं, तो that extra amount is considered to be taxable in your hand. Why? It is because it is deemed to be received. वो contribution कहाँ जा रहा है? Fund में. The contribution is going to fund. You are not receiving it in your bank account. It is going to the fund, but it would be deemed to be received by you when it is in excess of 12%. मैम अगर 12% तक है तो वो टैक्सेबल नहीं होता. 12% से ज्यादा है तो वो डीम्ड टू बी रिसीव्ड होता है. दैट इज व्हाई इट इज टैक्सेबल. गॉट इट? सिमिलरली इंटरेस्ट उस अकाउंट में अगर 9.5% से ज्यादा है, if the interest in that account is more than 9.5%, then it is deemed to be received. Even if interest is getting credited to that account, you're not receiving in your hand, you're not receiving for your immediate disposal, still that interest above 9.5% is taxable. Why? Because it is deemed to be received. Then एक scheme होता है national pension scheme. There is one scheme called national pension scheme which runs under section 80 CCD. उसका benefit runs under section 80 CCD. So whatever the contribution your employer is making to the national pension scheme. Pension क्या होता है? In general, a monthly or a fixed amount which you will be getting after retirement. ठीक है, अभी इतना समझना is more than enough. So in NPS, when the contribution is made by your employer, that अब वो contribution कहाँ जा रहा है? वो scheme में, वो pension के लिए इकट्ठा हो रहा है. That amount is getting accumulated for your pension purpose. Today you are not receiving any benefit, but it would be deemed to be received. That आपको it would be deemed that you are receiving it and it would be taxable. So any contribution of employer to a pension scheme would be deemed to be received and hence would be taxable. Similarly, okay, now this is tough to explain. Similarly, there is one thing called URPF and there is another thing called RPF. Ma'am, ye kya hai? Both are types of provident fund. One is recognized by income tax department, another is not recognized. Unrecognized is URPF. Recognized means considered by income, matlab they have been given an approval by income tax department. So whenever you shift any money which is in an unrecognized fund to a recognized fund, that money on shifting becomes taxable. अब अगेन आपके हाथ में कुछ नहीं मिला, आपने एक फंड से उठा के दूसरे फंड में डाल दिया. You have taken an amount from one fund and you have put that amount in another fund. Now again you will say कि मैम taxable क्यों हुआ? Why we have not received anything? कुछ भी मेरे बैंक अकाउंट में नहीं आ रहा. मैम nothing is getting credited in my bank account. I am not getting any money. Again, prima facie you are not getting it, but they are deemed to be got or deemed to be received. Why? Because they are above certain limits, like we saw in this case, or there is a contribution made by employer that we saw in this case, and there is a shifting from non-approved provident funds to approved provident fund. So जो non-approved provident fund में पैसा है वो taxable हो जाता है on shifting to an approved provident fund or withdrawal. ठीक है? So अब इतना is enough to understand. टेक्निकली मैम ATCCD क्या है? मैम आरपीएफ के बारे में और बताओ. मैम व्हाट इज आरपीएफ? मैम व्हाट इज ATCCD? व्हाट इज पेंशन स्कीम? थोड़ा सा टाइम दो. सेकेंड थर्ड क्लास में यू कैन नॉट एक्सपेक्ट टू गेट ऑल द टर्म्स इन हैंड. ठीक है, प्राइमा फेसी समझ आया. इनकम डीम्ड टू बी रिसीव्ड मींस यू हैव नॉट रिसीव्ड इन योर बैंक अकाउंट, you have not received in your hand, it is not there for your disposal, it is there in some funds for your benefit of future. मिलेगा आपको ही फ्यूचर में। प्रोविडेंट फंड आपने सुना होगा फ्रॉम योर पेरेंट्स, फ्रॉम योर फैमिली मेंबर, दैट पीएफ का पैसा you will only get it, but in future, if that future can be down 5 lines post retirement, that is totally different. So वो आज ही taxable हो जाएगा, that would become taxable today itself on deeming provisions, and that is when in provident fund the contribution of employer exceeds a certain limit, that is 12%. When the interest exceeds certain amount, which is 9.5% rate pay, when the contribution is made by employer to pension schemes, and once unapproved fund से आप approved fund में पैसे transfer कर दो. Yes, very good point, Darshan. Only contribution of employer would be considered because खुद का contribution is like application of income. It is not income. Okay. Got it? पढ़ लिया? चले? Next, we now understand the concept of, again, a very important tax criteria, income accruing or deemed to accrue. सबसे पहले तो accruing का मतलब क्या होता है? First of all, any income which is getting due, एक होता है due but not accrued, one is called accrued. Can someone tell me all these stuff? Some people use the word due and accrue interchangeably. What does all the terms mean? So income accrue means when the right to receive is ensured, as in you have got the right to receive that income. Now it is accrued, you will receive. Due means that there's a right to enforce payment. Some people, again, I told you, they use this word interchangeably because जहाँ पे right to enforce payment हुआ, वहाँ पे right to receive the payment भी हुआ. But for example, the salary which you are getting for the entire month, which you will get at the end of the month or after a certain period once the month end, वो due हर रोज हो रहा है. That is getting due every day. Every day when I show up to work, the salary is getting due. But it would be accrued and would be, I would be eligible to receive it only when, sorry, I'll say on Malta. The salary is getting accrued throughout the month, but I will be able to receive it only when on the last day of the month or maybe by 7th of the month, whenever they have said that it would be due to be received. Okay, so it is getting accrued every time when I'm working. जैसे मैंने salary किया, wherever I was salary किया, I'm saying whenever I go to give an employment service, I am getting the right to receive the income. But it would be due only once a certain time period has come. अब मैं रोज तो नहीं बोल सकती कि आज मेरा right to receive salary हो गया तो give me the salary for today. No, I have to wait to enforce the payment, say the last day of the month. Up if they do not give on the last day of the month, then I can take a legal action and ask them to give me the payment if they are not giving it. So right to accrue and right to due is coming from right to receive versus right to enforce. Okay, now, for example, in the case of bank interest, a bank interest is getting accrued every day, but it is due only on a certain time. Generally, some banks have a policy to give half yearly interest or have a policy to give quarterly interest or have a policy to give annual interest. So Interest हर रोज लग रहा है on whatever the balance is there at the end of the day, but ultimately it gets reflected or it gets into my account only on a particular day. Similarly, if I've taken a bonds, now bonds pay interest is getting, they are accrued every day till the period I have held that bond, but it would be due only on a certain day to receive it. So that is how the concept of accruing and due gets once. But for you, accruing is an important concept. Why? Because the right to create an income is received. That is your income now. Now, a question comes, ma'am, accrue or receive अलग-अलग साल में हुआ तो see, if you have taxed an income on accrued basis, you will not tax that income again on received basis. Now, suppose as per accrual concept, I have shown a particular income in my previous year 22-23. Now, when I'm receiving it in previous year 23-24, I will not show that as income on receipt basis. And you will say, ma'am, आपने कहा था income accrued during the year is also taxable and income received during the year is also taxable in India. But जो income accrue के बेस पे tax हो गई है, वो receive के basis पे दोबारा tax नहीं होगी. The income which is taxed on accrued basis would not be taxed again on received basis and vice versa. And vice versa. Got it? So accruing concept is clear. Now the question comes, ma'am, what is deemed to accrue? Deemed to accrue matlab that this income would be accrued or sorry, would be deemed or would be presumed to arise in India. Would be presumed that it is generated in India, would be presumed that it is stored in India as per the provision of Section 9. Now, Section 9 deals with income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Deeming provisions है. अब deeming provision है मतलब prima facie आपको लग रहा होगा that it is not getting accrued. Why? Because maybe parties are outside India, transaction is happening outside India. Consideration for that income is received in other than Indian currency. All of these things can happen. But if the provisions of Section 9 applies, if the provision of Section 9 applies, it would be termed as income deemed to accrue in India, and it would be taxable in India, irrespective of your residential status, because accrued and deemed to accrue both are taxable in India. Deeming provisions you have to understand from the perspective of non-resident. Why deeming provisions for accrual you have to understand from the perspective of non-resident. Why so? Because from the perspective of resident, everything is taxable, right? So यहाँ पे एक non-resident perspective से समझना कि why this income is called as deemed to accrue. Why this income is called as deemed to accrue? Because उसके लिए it becomes important. ROR के लिए तो everything is taxable, but for a non-resident, it is extremely important to understand why it is called deemed to accrue. चले? Correct, Ishan. Correctly summarized. Accrued income means earned but not received, and it would be received only when it is due to be received. दर्शन अभी पेंशन स्कीम का टैक्सेबिलिटी पे मत फोकस करो. तभी आई टोल्ड यू once you do salary and you will revisit section 7, it would be more relatable. Incurred word is a wrong word, Tejasvi, to use. What section 9 is aiming to tell us, is that clear? That we have to see what types of incomes would be deemed to accrue, even if prima facie they are appearing that it is not accruing in India, it is not getting generated in India. So section 9 covers a list of types of income. बहुत सारा list है which would be considered to be Section 9 covers a list of income which would be considered to be deemed to accrue in India. So Section 9 subsection 1 है which has all the list. Okay. Whereby first list talks about income accruing directly or indirectly from India. This is Section 9 Clause 1. From India through business connection in India, through any asset which is in India, or any source of income of which is in India, transfer of capital assets situated in India. So directly or indirectly from India, through a business connection, through any assets in India, or from transfer of capital assets situated in India. Ma'am, ये खत्म हो गया नहीं? This we have just started. Section 9 subsection 1 talks about all of this thing. Then section 9 talks about when would salary income would be deemed to accrue in India. Section 9 subsection 3 talks about when would dividend be deemed to be accrued and arise in India. Section 9 subsection 1 clause 4 talks about when would interest be deemed to be accrued or arise in India. When would next clause talks about when would royalty would be deemed to be accrued or arise in India. Next talks about when would fee for technical services would be deemed to accrue or arise in India. And the last one introduced a couple of years back, when would a gift which is received outside India would be deemed to accrue or arise. So, हर एक income perspective से now we would be understanding that when it would be deemed to accrue or arise in India. I told you one thing यहाँ पे ध्यान रखना, perspective from a non-resident. A person is sitting outside India. He is majorly a non-resident. He is majorly outside India only. Now, from his perspective, you have to see whether the income is accruing in India or not, that is deemed to be accrued in India or not. If yes, then it would be taxable. So people will make a transaction in such a way that it does not look that it is happening or it is getting sourced from India. But because of the provision of section 9 subsection 1, you have to ensure that it is deeming to accrue or arise in India. Can I say one thing here, that this section is not only important to understand this particular chapter, this section is important to understand the taxability of income tax as a whole, from the understanding of taxability of non-resident. This section plays an extremely important role when you are at your final level also. So do not take this section lightly. Okay, if you know this section, very nice. If you do not know this section, please focus on the class today. So one by one, clause by clause, we will go and we'll understand the deeming provisions. First of all, first is income deemed to accrue or arise in India, which is arising to an SSC in any place outside India, whether directly or indirectly through a business connection in India. Matlab, it is arising outside India, but it's arising from a business connection in India. So, सबसे पहले, first वाला we have to understand is what is business connection. Ma'am, what is business connection in India? Section 9, subsection 1, clause 1 में there are again 4 parts: business connection, property, source, and capital assets. So first part we are doing is what does a business connection in India means? मतलब non-resident को ऐसा लग रहा है कि income बाहर accrue हो रही है, but it is getting accrued from a business connection in India. That's why it would be taxable in India as deemed to accrue. मतलब समझ आया? That prima facie it looks that the income is getting accrued outside, but since that it is coming directly or indirectly from a business connection in India, it would be assumed that it is deemed to accrue or arise in India. Okay, it would be assumed that it is accrued in India. Now, first of all, business connection मतलब इसको समझने के लिए let's have a person in mind who is Mr. Ross. Okay, so this person, Mr. Ross, is a non-resident. He has an agent in India who takes care of his business activities. Now, that agent is, say, Mr. Bajaj. Okay. So, Mr. Ross has an agent in India who takes care of his business related activity. So, अब जो Mr. Bajaj, whatever work Mr. Bajaj is doing, for the income which would be accruing to Ross would be considered as an income coming from a business connection, and that business connection obviously is in India and would be treated as income of Mr. Ross. हम ये सोचेंगे, so can I say business connection means a full-time agent of a person who's in India? Just to understand the concept of it, a business connection can be a full-time agent of a person in India who is staying in India and habitually completing all the business related tasks. So usse whatever income is coming would be said that it's an income accruing in India. Ma'am, example, अब है क्या, Ross is sitting outside, but he has given an authority to Mr. Bajaj that Bajaj का income नहीं है, Bajaj is just an agent. Mr. Bajaj, who he says that find out contract for me, find out parties for me, sign a contract on my behalf, maintain the stock of goods on my behalf, secure all orders on my behalf. You do everything on my behalf. But government को क्या लगेगा? Ross is sitting outside. Even if the final income is getting credited in his Ross foreign account, तो इनकम जनरेट ही नहीं हुआ. क्यों? क्योंकि रॉस इंडिया में आया ही नहीं बिजनेस करने के लिए. रॉस डिड नॉट कम इन इंडिया टू डू द बिजनेस, और ही वाज इन इंडिया फॉर अ वेरी स्मॉल टाइम, बट otherwise because of his agent he is able to do business activities in India in the form of concluding contracts, in the form of securing order, in the form of maintaining stock. So the income tax department says that if you have a business connection, who is that business connection for Ross? Mr. Bajaj. So if you have a business connection in India, any income which is coming from this business connection would be deemed to accrue or arise in India. समझ आया? अभी we have not done anything as per the tax concept. We have understood it from a layman part. कि Ross का business connection Mr. Bajaj would be there, and Mr. Bajaj के through whatsoever activities are performed, उससे whatever income would be generated would be an income considered to be accrued to Mr. Ross. Why? Because Mr. Ross very smartly appointed a agent who was doing all his work, and that agent is called a business connection. That agent is called a business connection. Now let's understand what the definition of business connection means. Business connection shall include any business activity carried out through a person acting on behalf of the non-resident. Business connection means any business activity carried on by Mr. Bajaj on the behalf of Mr. Ross. Business connection to be established for, अब कैसे बोलेंगे that person is a business connection, or how will I say that the person is acting on behalf of the non-resident? When he has an authority, उसको एक authority दी हुई है, number one, and he habitually मतलब oftenly he exercises authority to conclude contracts. To conclude contracts मतलब he is getting and finalizing the contracts for Mr. Ross. So when a person has an authority to habitually which he habitually exercise to conclude contracts on behalf of non-resident, he habitually conclude contracts or habitually plays the role of principal. मतलब वो है agent, but he is habitually, see the word habitually is used quite a few times to stress that it's not a one-time activity which an agent is doing. He is doing it oftenly. So if he's oftenly concluding the contract, finalizing the terms, or oftenly he acts as a principal leading to conclusion of contract by that non-resident, and such contract is in the name of non-resident for providing any services, for providing any ownership, for transfer of any asset, that contract is said to be concluded by a person acting on behalf of non-resident, and hence any income which is coming from that contract would be termed as income from business connection and would be termed as income of Mr. Ross on deeming provision. कल को मिस्टर रॉस कैन से कि भाई मैं तो इंडिया आया ही नहीं टू फॉर्म द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, मैंने किसी पार्टी से बात भी नहीं करी, आप कैसे कह सकते हो कि दैट इनकम इज कमिंग फ्रॉम बिजनेस? What did I say? A person, Mr. Ross, can say, I did not come to India, I did not form a particular contract, I did not meet the parties, but he very smartly had a business connection who was doing all those things. That's why an income coming from that business connection would be considered as income of Ross. Okay. Next is, he does not have an authority to conclude contract, but he's habitually maintaining stock of goods, merchandise from which he regularly deliver goods or merchandise on behalf of the non-resident. उसको contract conclude करने की जिम्मेदारी नहीं दी. He has not been given a responsibility of concluding the contracts, but he is given a responsibility of maintaining stock, delivering the stock on the directions of non-resident. Then also he would be said to be a business connection. For example, let's say Mr. Ross has an office, or Mr. Ross is again trading in some special items or some special chocolates which he delivers to people in India. Okay. Now the stock of this chocolate or the stock of this sweets is maintained by a person. He has if the stock is maintained outside India, problem क्या होगा? Shipment बहुत ज़्यादा issue हो जाएगा. So Mr. Ross very smartly finds a person who would maintain the stock of all these things, take care of the stock, and then on the instructions of the order received, he will deliver that stock. So that means he's acting as a business connection for the non-resident. So business connection is again any person who is acting on behalf of non-resident, and usse jo business activity aa rahi hai, that would be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Or third situation, a business connection or a person acting on behalf can be said when he secures orders in India, mainly or wholly for non-resident, mainly or wholly for the non-resident. Matlab he is only securing order for this person and no other person. Then that person is said to be a person acting on behalf of the non-resident, and hence he would be a business connection for a person who's a non-resident. So again, let's conclude. For a non-resident, even if an income is accruing or arising outside India, but it is coming from a business connection in India, it's said to be an income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Now, what is business connection? Business connection means income from any business activity which is carried out by a person acting on behalf of non-resident. Now, what do you mean by person acting on behalf of non-resident? So, a person acting on behalf of non-resident means when he has an authority and he habitually conclude contracts because of that authority, or habitually act as a principal in concluding contracts. Second, if he does not have an authority to conclude contract, but still he habitually maintains the stock and deliver the goods as per the instructions of non-resident. Or he secures order in India, matlab India mein jaake he's pitching it to clients and then he's securing order mainly and wholly for the non-resident. Then in this case, the business connection is established, and once the business connection is established, so in activity se jo bhi income aayega whatever the income is getting generated once a business connection is established is said to be an income accruing or arising in India. But what do you mean by mainly and wholly? And what does this mean, mainly and wholly for non-resident? And if this person should exclusively work for the non-resident, if he is giving the services to all the people abroad, कि कोई भी आके मेरे से help ले सकता है in securing order, I would help you getting a deal. He's acting as a general broker, then that person is not business connection. When I have an exclusive person who is just mainly working for me, that is what is called business connection. उसका एक dependent status है उस पे. But if he is working independently and providing the same service to a lot of people, that does not mean he's a business connection. What did I say? So if Mr. Bajaj is exclusively working for Mr. Ross in securing order, then he's a business connection. But if Mr. Bajaj is working as a broker in independent capacity and he's providing that securing order service to multiple people, then he is not a business connection of Mr. Ross. Why? Because वो exclusively उनके लिए work नहीं कर रहा. So for a person to be a business connection, the sense of exclusiveness or the sense of mainly and wholly should be there. Another concept यहाँ पे बोला कि आपने मैम mainly और wholly तो बोल दिया, but एक exception है इसका. There's one exception to it. What is an exception? Securing an order में वहाँ पे लिखा है कि it should be mainly and wholly for non-resident, right? So if in this case Mr. A, who is acting on behalf of Mr. X non-resident, and he secures order, then he becomes business connection of Mr. X. Business connection is established, correct? यहाँ तक तो you all got. But suppose Mr. A is also securing order for Mr. Y. Is also securing order for Mr. Y, and Mr. Y and Mr. X may, it's a relationship that maybe X is a holding company of Y, or maybe Y is a holding company of X, or maybe X and Y both are subsidiary of a common company called Z. So in that case, if along with X, Mr. A is securing order for Y, Mr. A is securing order for Y, तो Y का भी business connection हो जाएगा इंडिया में, and that business connection would be Mr. A. So what again? Securing order mainly and wholly for non-resident makes that person acting on behalf of non-resident and makes the business connection established. But if at some time Mr. A or the person who is acting on behalf of non-resident also secures order for other non-resident, and that other non-resident and Mr. X has a common control or controls each other, then in that case is also would be said to be a business connection for Y. So to conclude, what is business connection? Business connection is when a person acting on behalf of the non-resident is having some business activity. That business activity is called business connection. And what do you mean by acting on behalf? Acting on behalf can be by habitually concluding contract on behalf of non-resident, by maintaining stock and delivering it on behalf of non-resident, and by habitually and mainly and wholly securing order for non-resident. Along with and khali for securing order perspective, if he's securing order for X another person, and that another person and the non-resident are either controlled by a common person or controlled each other, then the person acting on behalf also becomes the business connection of other non-resident. And once the business connection is established, whatever income is getting generated from that business connection would be taxed in India. So if Joy Inc. is a US company. Now that company has multi-geographical operations. That means they manufacture a product in USA by getting some raw materials. The finishing and other items of the product happens in India, and the final assembling and marketing happens from Russia. So if Joy Inc. is outside India, it's a non-resident. If all the activities, all the business activities of India is done through a business connection, that is done through a person who is acting on behalf of Joy, then whatever income is generated from this activity would be said to be an income deemed to accrue or arise in India. So you have to remember that not the entire income of the product would be income deemed to accrue or arise in India, only the income proportion to the income which is being generated from the business connection in India would only be income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Simple सा part है, Indian government says that, sir, आप business activity India में कर रहे हो. You are doing business activities in India, even if you're not doing it directly, even if you're sitting outside, even if all the transactions are happening in your account, but it would be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Why? Because you have left one person in India who is doing all such activity on your behalf, which otherwise would have done by you. So if that person is acting on your behalf, and the business connection is established, so whatever income you're getting from that business activity would be Indian income. It would be Indian sourced income. It would be Indian generated income. Simple. So is the concept of business connection clear? Because this is the most typical concept to understand and most important concept to understand. इसमें जो पार्ट समझ नहीं आया, please feel free to ask, but tell me where the doubt is also, okay? समझ आया नहीं आया, please say. तो अच्छा, वन मोर थिंग राहुल हैज सेड, वो बिजनेस कनेक्शन का इनकम नहीं होगा, वो इनकम नॉन रेजिडेंट का होगा. बिजनेस कनेक्शन इज जस्ट द पर्सन हु इज एक्टिंग ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ नॉन रेजिडेंट, राइट? So income would be of non-resident. That's why first thing I told you, think from the perspective of non-resident to understand section 9, and it will be pretty easy. सिंपल सी बात है, आपने एक एजेंट रखा हुआ है which is exclusively your agent and who is doing all the business activity in India, and you are getting income through it. So that income which my agent is getting generated for me is my income accrued in India. Simple. So उसको अब technically business connection law language में कैसे गवर्नमेंट ने लिखा वो भी सौ. Yes, very interesting question. Agent may be very interesting question, Sudhanshu. Agent can be resident, can be non-resident. If he is in India and doing all those activities and exclusive activities for securing orders, that person is called an agent. Or but my friends, you will never use the word agent in your exam. Agent word is just to explain you. You use the word person acting on behalf. Yes, Tejas, authority can be signing of the contracts also, because वहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है ना, acting as a principal on behalf of non-resident, उसको power of attorney दे दिया. He is given the power of attorney. But again, I'm saying no one use the word agent. Agent word use nahi karna, please. Chalo, great. Now, कुछ साल पहले, some years back. Actually, before I go to this. Oh. Now, there are certain exceptions to when a business connection is established, but still it would not be considered as income accrued to India, or you can say it prima facie looks a business connection is there, but it would not be considered to be a business connection. First, you always have to remember, which I said in the example, that only the income which is being generated from the business connection would be taxed in India, not the entire global income coming from the business to the non-resident, because that business can be suppose he's just securing order for me, but उसके बाद उसमें मैं कुछ आफ्टर सेल सर्विसेज का एलिमेंट है जिससे इनकम आ रहा है. There can be other multiple functions which are happening. So only to the extent the income which is in relation to securing order, wo I have to tax it in India, or the person is maintaining stock and delivering it. So only to the extent of that particular activity, jitna business connection generate kar raha income, only to that extent has to be taxable, not the entire global income coming from that particular business. ठीक है. उसके अलावा there are certain exceptions to the term business connection. One is that the purchase of goods in India to export, like this person is purchasing good, so there is this business connection who was Mr. Bajaj. Okay, he is purchasing good, but entirely to export outside India. There is no sale happening in India. There is no sale happening in India. Then this would not be termed as income from business connection in India. Mr. Bajaj is the person acting on behalf of the non-resident, but the entire business activity is actually redirecting to export, and export से तो income India में generate होगा नहीं, sale would happen outside. So when the person who is acting on behalf of the non-resident just purchase certain goods to export completely, no income would be deemed to accrue or arise from such business connection. Okay. Third, second exception is collection of news and views in India for transmission out of India. Now, say New York Times comes to India, okay, they collect the news, they collect the views, and all of this happens, all of this is transmitted, or all of this is shown in the New York channel, Ab Indian government will not say कि ये जो business channel या business news या जो भी news the outside Indian news agencies are showing, उससे जो income is getting generated should be an income accruing in India. Why? Because news जो आ रही है वो India की आ रही है. If they are coming to collect news and ultimately that is being transmitted outside India, it would not be called a business connection in India. Next, very interesting one, shooting of cinematographic films in India. मतलब India में foreign films का shooting हो रहा है. Now suppose Warner Brothers come and shoot, I think if I have a very bad knowledge of Marvels and etc. Suppose they shoot a particular scene in India. Okay. And then they leave. अब you will not say कि अब इस movie की sale से जो price आ रहा है, you give it to us, a proportion of it Why? Because some part was short in India. No, it would not be said that income is deemed to accrue or arise in India in this case if 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 Warner Brothers is a not citizen of India, or if Warner Brothers is a company, then it does not have any shareholder who is a Indian resident or citizen, or if a Warner Brother is a firm, then it does not have any partner who is an Indian citizen. So shooting of films in India of a foreign company would not be considered as income generated in India, or would not be considered as income accrued in India, mainly because of the fact it is being shot here. And if the non-resident who is coming and shooting, as in the producer, is an individual and he's not a citizen of India, or if it's a firm, he does not have any partner who is a citizen of India or a resident of India, and if it's a company who does not have any shareholder who is a citizen or resident of India. Okay, got it? Another exception to business connection is activities which are confined to displays rough diamonds in special notified zone. Now, क्या होता है? Diamonds which are mined, they are displayed in some special notified zone. बाहर की companies come and in connection with the central government, they display such uncut diamond. So उस display से खाली, I'm not talking about sale, उस display से कोई भी income generate होगा, that would not be called as income from business connection in India. Okay. So from your perspective, you have to remember one of cinematographic films, one you have to remember of export of goods. When a business connection or when a person acting on behalf of the person of a non-resident purchase good just to export, that would not be called an income from business connection. And when the news are collected in India, or the views are collected in India but are transmitted outside India, that would also not be considered as business connection. Got it? So once this part is clear, we'll come to another part in the same thing. उन्होंने एक term, मैंने आपको business connection का definition बताया, but a couple of years back, again keeping in mind the global scenarios, they included one more term in the definition of business connection, and that term is called significant economic presence. That term is called significant economic presence. अगर students, मैं आपको सिर्फ इस word को analyze करने के लिए बोलूं, significant economic presence is also of a non-resident is also called or will also constitute a business connection. What do this mean? Agar I'm saying a non-resident has significant economic presence, generally आप क्या समझोगे? What would generally you understand with this term? Just by reading the term. राहुल, अगर एजेंट को कोई कमीशन मिलेगा, ऑब्वियसली से या तो कमीशन मिलेगा या सैलरी मिलेगा, वो तो एजेंट का इनकम है ही है, राइट? यहाँ पे वी आर टॉकिंग फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ नॉन रेजिडेंट जो एक्टिविटीज कर रहे हो उन एजेंट के थ्रू. ओके, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द नॉन रेजिडेंट हु आर डूइंग एक्टिविटीज थ्रू दोस एजेंट. Significantly interested in India. Business has a major market share in an industry. Okay. Okay. Very okay. Good. Okay. Other people, please give a try to what does significant economic presence mean. Good economic advantage. Okay. तो सिग्निफिकेंट इकोनॉमिक प्रेजेंस का कॉन्सेप्ट क्यों आया? You saw business connection में अभी तक where we were understanding, we were saying that there's a person who is acting on behalf of non-resident, correct? There's a person who is acting on behalf of non-resident. But now because of internet, sometimes a non-resident does not need a person to act on behalf of him. Automatically, because of the global reach which a person is getting, he can generate income without anyone acting or without an agent also, correct? He can generate income without anyone helping out or without anyone acting on behalf of him. So if a person has a significant economic presence, that means he's earning in a good amount or substantially of because of him having a economic presence in India, or because of him having a economic presence in India, that significant economic presence is also a business connection. तो पहले जैसे हम कन्वेंशनली पढ़ रहे हैं कि बिजनेस कनेक्शन के लिए एक बंदा होना चाहिए, there should be person who should be acting on behalf of non-resident, but now significant economic presence is also called business connection. Significant economic presence would also constitute business connection. And why? Because of the technology, the person does not need anyone to act on behalf of him. He can generate income just by using technology, just by using internet, and have substantial income coming from India. And have substantial income coming from India because his economic presence is established in a way. Uska economy mein presence is established in a way that he can earn a good amount or a substantial amount from India without even being appointing anyone. So significant economic presence is also a business connection. ये समझ आया? अब how do you quantify कि what would be a significant economic presence? मैं उस substantial word को quantify कैसे करूंगी that this is significant economic presence or this is not significant economic presence. So if first I'll read it. Significant economic presence means in respect of any goods or services or property carried out by non-resident with any person in India, including provision of download of data or software in India, and the aggregate of such payments arising from such transactions during the previous year exceed 2 crores. So, अब क्या होता है? We download so many type of antivirus softwares, right, from websites, and these websites are generally foreign based. We make payment also. अब क्या होता था? Before this explanation 2A got inserted, people who are earning income which from such downloading of software or from such purchase of goods and services did not show it as income taxable in India. Why? Because वो कहते थे कि नॉन रेजिडेंट तो इंडिया में आया ही नहीं, सब कुछ इंटरनेट के थ्रू है. But now since they have included it in the term of business connection and any activity from business connection is taxable in India, so hence if significant economic presence is there, then that income would be taxable in India. Why? Because it would be termed as income accruing from a business connection. And now you will ask, ma'am, what is significant economic presence? So if I talk about downloading software, the provision of any goods and services, and the aggregate payment coming from those transactions is more than 2 crore, then there is a significant economic presence. This word से अब देखो ना 2 crore earn कर रहे हो आप उन transactions से, and still you are not paying tax. So now because of you being covered under the definition of significant economic presence, SEP, you would be paying tax of that in India. Why? Because it is deemed to be accrued in India. Why? Because it's coming from a business connection, which is in form of significant economic presence. Or significant economic presence, how do you establish? When we talk about transactions in respect of goods or services or downloading softwares, and the quantum of that transaction is more than 2 crores. और वो सॉफ्टवेयर कौन डाउनलोड करे? People who are in India. IP address India का यूज हो रहा है. That in those transactions we say that it's a significant economic presence. Presence है और significant है. There is a presence and that is significant. And how is that significant defined? When the transaction values of more than 2 crores. Up to 1 crore hai, you might not show it as income taxable, but significant economic presence once established, it's an income taxable in India. Why? It's deemed to accrue in India. Next, systematic and continuous soliciting of business activities or engaging in interaction with users of India. What example I can take for it? And when the number of users on that platform are more than 3 lakhs. Bumble is an Indian company, or say any dating app, okay, which is not an Indian app. You are registered there, okay, you are engaging customers there. People pay amount to get premium accounts there. So if you are engaging customers systematically and continuously, and the users or the interaction or the number of users registered on your platform is more than 3 lakh, then you have significant economic presence in India. You have significant economic presence in India. पहले क्या था? Until few years, they did not define the quantum. Up, they have notified the quantum that what would be a significant economic presence. So can I say related? Simply you have to relate it, nothing you have to ratify. आप यहाँ पे बैठ के सॉफ्टवेयर डाउनलोड्स कर रहे हो and you are making payment of that. अब वहां पे non-resident is earning income from you, but they did not pay tax because they did not say it is accrued in India. But now they have to pay tax on it. Now they have to deem to accrue it a right in India if they significantly are generating income from it. And how is that defined? So if it's about providing services, providing goods, providing software downloads, then the transaction value should be more than 2 crore in that previous year. Or if it's just a platform for engaging users, for interaction with users, for getting their data, then us platform pe at least number of users should be 3 lakhs. At least number of users should be 3 lakhs. And this is not per year user. यहाँ पे कहीं पे भी per year defined नहीं है. So once the number of users on that platform crosses 3 lakhs, whatever income you will be generating from those users in India would be called as significant economic presence. अब उसमें से कहीं पे मैटर नहीं करता कि नॉन रेजिडेंट डिड नॉट कम टू इंडिया टू गिव सर्विस, नॉन रेजिडेंट वाज कंप्लीटली आउटसाइड इंडिया, नॉन रेजिडेंट को पैसा बाहर मिला, it does not matter. India may provider can be non-resident, but the person who is receiving those services in India, who is the recipient of those goods in India, who's using that platform is of IP address of India, you have significant economic presence. And how is that? When the transaction values of 2 crores or more, or when we talk about in the sense of users, the number of users are more 3 lakhs or more. Got it? Everybody, please, isko padho. No, both the conditions should not be satisfied. Either of the conditions satisfied would be, Sudhanshu would be making it as business connection. सबसे best example to understand point A is an antivirus, and for B you can use any dating app which is outside India, which was formed outside India. So students understand why the concept of significant economic presence was introduced. Why? Because of internet, people need not have a person acting on behalf of them. They can do the work just like that also now. Okay. Now, why I make so much kitchen? अभी तक हमने उस pointers में से where we wrote, we have just covered one part of one part, and that is the business connection in India. Where it can go. Just one second, guys. So अभी तक हमने क्या पढ़ा? Income deemed to accrue or arise in India would be income which is accruing outside India, but is directly or indirectly from India through a business connection in India. अभी तक हमने बस ये समझा. In business connection में we saw that it can include a person acting on behalf of non-resident, and it can include SEP, which is significant economic presence. Significant economic presence कब होगा? जब उस platform को use करके either there's a transaction value of crossing 2 crores in the previous year, or the users on that platform are 3 lakhs or more. Business connection by a person acting on behalf of non-resident kab hoga? When he's concluding contract habitually, maintaining stock habitually, and delivering it, maintaining stock habitually and delivering it, and third, securing order. तब वो पर्सन एक्टिंग ऑन बिहाफ होगा. दोनों सिचुएशन में से कुछ भी फुलफिल हुआ, it would be income coming from business connection and it would be taxable in India. Next is income from any assets in India or from any source in India. मतलब सिंपल सा है, if I'm getting an income from FD in India, it's an income accrued in India. अगर वो asset या उसका source इंडिया में है, उससे कोई भी income आ रहा है would be an income accrued in India. अब वो income you are receiving it in your foreign accounts, you're receiving after the end of the year, you're receiving it through some checks or anything, or you're receiving in kind. Once the income is generated from any asset which is in India, like your house property. House property is an asset situated in India. If you have, say, house in Mumbai, even if you're staying in USA and you're a non-resident, whatever your Mumbai house rental income is, it would be your income from an asset in India. Got it? If you have invested in, say, bonds of an Indian company, it's a source from India. अब उससे जो interest आएगा, that would be an income generated in India, and that would be taxable in the hands of non-resident, as in or in the hands of all types of people on income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Next is transfer of capital asset situated in India. So income from transfer of capital asset. When you transfer a capital asset, usse jo income hoga, that would be a income deemed to accrue in India, provided the capital asset is situated in India. So if I'm selling a house which is in Delhi, and I am a person who is living in New York, and I sell the house to another person who is also living in New York, but the house is in Delhi. Even if the agreement between two parties has happened outside India, even if both are non-resident, even if जो पैसा मुझे देगा would be in USD, does not matter. Since the capital asset was situated in India, if whatever profits or whatever gains would come would be my income deemed to accrue or arise in India. If part mein, there is certain thing when we talk about capital asset which would be deemed to be situated in India when the data assets in India, but that is not there at your level. You just have to understand jo bhi samajh paya. So now with this we complete our section 9 subsection 1 ka point 1. Uske baad thode chote chote hai, but the main and the most important was to understand the term business connection, significant economic presence. Any asset in India, transfer from capital asset situated in India is simple one. Got it? किसी को यहाँ तक कोई doubt? Anyone has any doubts? So today I have tried to put most of the Hindi also quickly in summarizing, so that people can easily relate and understand it. Okay. So we'll take a quick break from here. By 8:30, we'll meet again and we'll start understanding what else would be income deemed to accrue or arise in India from Section 9, Subsection 1, Clause 2. Okay, so we were discussing about section 9, subsection 1, where we were talking about income accruing or arising outside India. But if we deem to accrue in India, if it's directly or indirectly from a business connection in India, from any asset or source in India, or from transfer of capital assets situated in India. So some of my friends said that मैम मेरी handwriting डॉक्टर जैसी है, वैसे अच्छी है बट इस टैब पे मतलब इतनी भी अच्छी नहीं है बट इस टैब पे थोड़ा सा हो जाता है. ओके, आई विल मेक श्योर दैट आई राइट मोर क्लियरली. ओके, नाउ coming to the next part, but before we go to the next part, some of my friend has few queries. Okay, so Goma has asked कि ma'am Instagram is having an income of so and so amount, will it be liable to pay tax even if it's a resident in US etc etc. See, आपको वो resident कहाँ पे है कहाँ पे नहीं does not matter. If that person is a non-resident, has a significant economic presence, they have to pay tax coming from the transactions which are happening in India. Once a significant economic presence is established, अब उस वजह से whatever income is getting generated from India would be taxed as income accruing in India. So if you say कि मैम only users की वजह से how would they get income? Users तो कुछ pay नहीं करते. Number one, users may not pay, but they are running ad to get users. वो ads Indian related users के लिए. Once the users are there, it is established that significant economic presence is there. Now, once the significant economic presence is established, then whatever is being accrued from that significant economic presence, be it in form of ads, be it from subscriptions, all of these would be income accrued in India. Now you will say कि सबसे पहले तो Instagram, Netflix इन सब का अब business connection India में है. They have their representative offices in India. Earlier, back in days when they did not have Netflix India or when they did not have Instagram India account, उस time पे you can apply. अब उनके offices India में हैं. They already have a office or a permanent establishment का concept आएगा or a licensing office that is a business connection in India already. So whatever is coming from those activities, from those subscriptions would be income accrued in India. Okay. So now we move ahead to understand our next type of income, which is deemed to accrue, which is when you are talking about salaries. So salary के case में, the term which is extremely important and you should quote it all the time is services rendered. Is services rendered. The salaries for services rendered outside India. See, when the services are rendered in India, it is always taxable in India. So even if a non-resident comes to India, he works here for 3 months and then he goes. वो उसको salary उसके US account में ही मिल रही है, that salary in his foreign account, but he came and rendered services in India. So India has a right to tax this 3 months income. This 3 months income as Indian taxable income. Why? Why? Because the services were rendered in India for that period. Now we're talking about prima facie, the services are rendered outside India. अब आप बोलोगे कि मैम services are rendered outside India, it should not be treated as Indian income. It should not be treated as income accrued in India. Correct. But when the services are rendered outside India by government, by this Indian citizen or Indian citizen who is an employee of government, then in that case it is deemed to accrue or arise in India. मैम मतलब so जैसे आपने हमारे डॉक्टर एस जयशंकर का नाम सुना होगा, right? Who's a foreign affairs minister. But since he's traveling a lot, it might be a situation that he may become non-resident. And he is there sometime outside India, he's representing India. Now he is working under Ministry of External Affairs. He is though the minister of it. He is getting an income as a minister. Now you will not say कि ma'am when he was outside India, it would be treated as income of outside India and it should not be accrued in India. When we talk about salaries which are payable by government, for services rendered outside India to citizens of India, that would be treated as salary taxable in India. But at the same time, when we tax such salaries, an exemption is given under allowances. Exemption is given for allowances and perquisite under Section 10, Clause 7. So Section 10, Clause 7 के according, the salary would be taxable. Sorry, Section 9, Subsection 1, Clause 3 के according, the salary would be taxable. But जो salary में allowances और perquisites होंगे ना, वो exempt हो जाएंगे as per Section 10, Clause 7. Example, अब जैसे ये example देखते हैं Mr. David का. Mr. David is an Indian citizen, aged 40 years, a government employee serving Ministry of External Affairs, left India for the first time on 31st March 2022. Due to his transfer to High Commission of Canada. High Commission मतलब embassies, Indian embassies in Canada. He did not visit India any time during the previous year 22-23. He has received the following income. First of all, Mr. David is a non-resident. Why? Because he did not come to India at all in the previous year 22-23. Now, for a non-resident, what all incomes are taxable? Income accrued in India and income received in India, or income accrued or deemed to accrue in India and income received or deemed to be received in India. Correct? अब उन दो perspective से we have to see what is income accrued or deemed to accrue in India. अब salary. Salary के लिए I told you, even if the services are rendered outside India, but if the employer is government and employee is citizen of India, that salary would be taxable in tax would be taxable in India. Next, foreign allowances not included in above. Now, allowances anyway are exempt under Section 10, Clause 7. Interest on fixed deposit from bank in India. Source is in India. Then this is deemed to accrue and arise in India. So this 1 lakh would also be taxable. Income from agriculture in Nepal. Now, Nepal से agriculture हो रहा है. The asset is also outside India. The activity is also outside India. So this 2 lakhs would not be taxable. Income from house property in Nepal. The source is situated outside India. This is also not taxable. Why? Because it is income deemed to accrue outside, not deemed to accrue in India. It's deemed to accrue outside India. Okay? So now for my person David, the total gross income of India is 5 of salary plus 1 lakh of fixed deposit का interest, total 6 lakh. So salaries के case में always remember that income for salary when it is earned in India, and earned का मतलब है when services are rendered in India would be taxable in India. अब वो pension, अब जैसे pension है, pension is in respect of services. Now suppose I got retired, ठीक है, I was serving with X Limited, okay, throughout my life. Now when I got retired, I moved to my sons who are living in USA. Now I am receiving pension. Now pension is getting for my services which I gave to X Limited. After retirement pension मिलता है. अब वो pension मुझे US में ही मिल रहा है. I'm receiving it in US. अब you will say कि ma'am this pension is received outside India and आप इस साल पे India में नहीं हो, तो it should not be treated as deemed to accrue or arise in India. The answer is no, because the pension which I am receiving today is for the services which I rendered in India, right? Which I rendered in India. So this pension is taxable income of India. Okay. So दोनों part clear. Second part also clear. First part also clear. That income for salaries earned in India and income of salaries payable by government for services rendered outside India. Third point में जो यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, it should be only and only when the employer is the government. If the employer is any private limited and the person is rendering services outside India, it will not make that income taxable in India. India में वो tax कब होगा? Only when services are rendered in India, in general. But when services are rendered outside India and the employer is the government, as in you are an employee of a government, you are the employee of the government, that case में वो Indian income माना जाएगा and it would be taxable in India. So prima facie I so salary से related points clear. Now we move to dividend. When would dividend be taxable as income accrued or deemed to accrue in India? Whenever dividends or whatever dividends are paid by Indian company, even if it is paid outside India, it would be my income deemed to accrue or arise in India and would be taxed in the hands of shareholders. Now suppose Mr. John, who is in Europe, has invested in Reliance India Limited. Now, Reliance India Limited declared dividend. Now, since the dividend is declared by Indian company, even if it is paid outside India to John in his foreign account, but since it is declared by Indian company, it would always be an income accrued in India. Got it? यहाँ तक किसी को doubt salaries and dividend में? Because now we are starting another very smart concept. Salaries कब taxable होगा इंडिया में, कब नहीं होगा? When would dividend be taxable or not? Guys, I'm waiting for the response. भूमिका, अगर कोई भी इंडियन कंपनी डिविडेंड डिक्लेयर करती है, if any Indian company is declaring dividend and it is being, even if it is paid outside India, section 9 को समझने के लिए you think yourself as a non-resident who is receiving those incomes outside India. ठीक है? So now even if you're receiving the dividend outside India, but it is coming from an Indian company, that dividend would always be assumed to be an income accrued in India and you have to pay tax on it. So non-resident के लिए हमेशा deemed to accrue or accrue in India is taxable, or in fact as a matter of fact सबके लिए, but it becomes crucial to understand section 9 from the aspect of my non-resident. Why? Because for them, even if the income is accruing outside or maybe receiving outside, there can be situations when they might, or there can be situations when it will always be an income deemed to accrue in India. Okay? So if a dividend, Darshan says if a dividend is paid by foreign company running its operations in India, prima facie it's not, I would not directly say it's a dividend accrued in India. Okay? Perfect. Now we move ahead to understand when would interest income, which is being received by a non-resident, being termed as a interest taxable in India. अब यहाँ पे अपने mind में we will keep, and Keshav, for you I will write better this time. यहाँ पे I'll keep in mind a person who's a non-resident, ठीक है, who is earning interest income. Interest income किस पे आता है? When you're giving a loan or any deposits or any investment as such which is earning interest. Okay. Now, prima facie this interest आप समझो कि it's on loan. Now understand it carefully. A non-resident can receive interest from government of India? Can receive interest from Government of India? Can receive interest from a resident of India? And can receive interest from a non-resident of India. Section 9, subsection 1, clause 5 talks about situations when this interest which is being received by the non-resident would be termed as deemed to accrue in India. अब वो कब माना जाएगा कि it's an income generated in India? Which income? This interest income. Deemed to accrue in India. ठीक है? When would be said? First of all, whenever you are receiving any interest from Government of India, it will always be income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Okay, whenever you are receiving interest from Government of India, as a for a resident, all types of income are taxable. These have to be focused specifically from the eye of non-resident. So when a non-resident is receiving interest from Government of India, it would always be taxable in India as income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Even if you're receiving it in your foreign bank accounts, does not matter. Whenever you are receiving an interest from resident in India, it will always be taxed as income deemed to accrue or arise in India. So if my NR friend, who is Mr. Mike, is receiving any interest from resident who is Mr. Abhay, so whatever interest Mr. Abhay is paying to Mr. Mike on the loan taken from this non-resident, who is Mr. Mike, that interest would be income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Now, isme there's a exception. Provided Mr. Abhay is not using the loan amount for any business or for generating any income outside India. He is using that loan for Indian purpose only, then only it would be an income of interest which is deemed to accrue or arise in India. So if Abhay uses the loan amount to earn any income outside India, or for investing in any business outside India, for any business outside India, for any or to earn any income outside India, if he is using that, then in that case, the interest would not be deemed to accrue or arise in India. But if you're using the loan amount properly in India, whatever interest is being paid to the non-resident, that would be income deemed to accrue in India. For example, मैंने Mike से पैसे लिए and Mike is a non-resident and I invested that money in purchasing shares of Singapore company. Now I use that money to earn income outside India. So whatever interest I will pay to Mike, it would not be a taxable income for Mr. Mike. Why? Because it is not deemed to accrue or arise in India. But suppose मैंने Mike से पैसे लिए, I took money from Mike and I invested in my business which is in India. Now on the loan, which the interest which I'll be paying to Mr. Mike, that interest would be income deemed to accrue or arise in India. So can I sum up, if the funds are being used in India, only then the interest of it would be taxable in the hands of non-resident as income deemed to accrue or arise in India when the interest is being paid by resident. Non-resident के case में, so suppose Mr. Mike has given loan to his another friend, Mr. Joey. Now, if Mr. Mike has given a loan to Mr. Joey and Mr. Joey is using that loan to earn any business in India, business or profession to or that money or that loan is invested in any business or profession which is carried out in India, then whatever Mr. Joy pays as interest to Mr. Mike, that interest would be called as income deemed to accrue or arise in India. So if the transaction is happening between one non-resident to another non-resident, and the non-resident uses that loan to invest in business purpose. Here, it's not any income, to invest in business purpose in India, then whatever interest that the person is paying on using that loan would be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in India in the hands of other non-residents. Now, if Mr. Mike gave money to Mr. Joy and Mr. Joy invested it in Indian shares, whether the loan पे जो interest which Mike would be getting, whether that would be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in India? The answer is no. Because between two non-residents, when the loan is being exchanged for which the person is getting interest income, the loan should be used for business purposes in India. For businesses purposes in India, then only the interest would be taxable in the hands of other non-residents. When it's between a transaction of non-resident and resident, then the loan should be used properly in India only. It should not be used to earn any income outside India, be it in case of profession or be at any source outside India. ठीक है, सिंपल सा बात है. पर्पस, वो जो इंटरेस्ट आ रहा है वो लोन कहाँ यूज हो रहा है उस पर डिपेंड करता है. नॉन रेजिडेंट के बीच में, इफ दैट लोन इज बीइंग यूज्ड फॉर business in India, then the interest is taxable in India. Non-resident के बीच में the interest is taxable, but if it is used for purpose other than for the purpose outside India to generate any income or for a business outside India, then it is not taxable in the hands of non-resident. Simple. इस गवर्नमेंट कहती है कि वो इंटरेस्ट जो लोन पे मिल रहा है वो कहाँ यूज हो रहा है, you have to see that to see whether it is taxable or not in the hands of non-resident. Got it? इंटरेस्ट वाले पार्ट पे क्लियर सबको? कोई डाउट? इंटरेस्ट किसको मिल रहा है? नॉन रेजिडेंट को. क्या पता फॉरेन, उसके फॉरेन अकाउंट में मिल रहा हो, बट डिपेंड करता है फ्रॉम whom it is getting and from what purpose that loan is being used for which the interest is being given. Think of any scenario which is coming into your mind to ask कि भैया ये इंटरेस्ट टैक्सेबल होगा या नहीं. Okay, clear, perfect. Then we move to royalty. Royalty meaning, what is, first of all, what is royalty? Does anyone know what is royalty? Royalty is also a type of income which is earned. So friends, what do one mean by royalty? So they say royalty means any consideration which is given for transfer for all or any rights in respect of patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, process or trademark or similar property. तो क्या होता है, when something which is exclusive to you, it is your मेहनत, your work, your invention, people immediately say इसको copyright करा लो, patent करा लो, so that other people cannot use it. ठीक है? Or other people cannot use it without paying royalty. When there is something which is exclusively your invention, idea, formula, design, artwork, anything, get that patented, get that copyrighted, so that anyone cannot use it randomly. So when a person wants to use it or when a person wants to have a benefit out of it, they will pay you royalty. They will pay you royalty for that because it was royally yours. Now we will pay you a royalty to use that. Royalty can also be a consideration given for imparting any information concerning the work or use of patent invention, model, design, secret formula, etc. या तो राइट्स देने पे जो मिल रहा हो या कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन देने पे कुछ मिल रहा हो, और the consideration which is being paid to use any patent invention, model, design, secret formula, etc., or the consideration which is paid for imparting any information concerning technical, industrial, commercial, or scientific knowledge, experience, or skill, or it can be a consideration given to use or right to use any industrial, commercial, or scientific equipment, or it can be for transfer of all rights, including license in respect of any copyright, literacy, artistic, or scientific work, including films, videotapes, for using in connection with televisions or tapes using in connection with radio broadcasting. अब जैसे एक ऑथर है, उसने बुक लिखी, नाउ टू, अब वो बुक उसका मेहनत है, उसका वर्क ऑफ आर्ट है, उसका लिटरेसी वर्क है, करेक्ट. नाउ दैट ऑथर विल गो टू अ पब्लिशिंग हाउस. So he or she is selling his work of art or work of knowledge, in respect of which the publishing house says that we will sell your book and we'll pay you certain amount for transferring all the rights of that art book. Because otherwise, if that knowledge, otherwise publishing house would sell it, it would come as a copyright infringement. But if they have purchased that knowledge and now that purchasing knowledge के लिए क्या वो देंगे, that they will give them the royalty. That royalty can be lump sum, as in one go. That royalty can be conditional, that if so many goods are sold, we will give you so much royalty. It can be anything. So royalty is ultimately when you give someone a consideration for using or for getting the right or for getting the information of someone's technical invention, model, patent, design, secret formula, etc., or for using their artistic work, literacy work, etc. Okay, that is called royalty. Now, how is even computer softwares when you download, that consideration is also called royalty, my friends, because they are also granting you license to use the software which they invented, right? So that is also called royalty. But when you pay for computer price as a whole or for a laptop as a whole, and usme some softwares are getting installed, that does not come under the definition of royalty. So if I'm purchasing some software separately, the consideration which I pay for it is royalty. If the software comes pre-installed with the laptop or computer or the system which I'm purchasing, that consideration when I pay to them, that is not royalty. Okay. अब royalty एक बारी समझ आ गया. Now we have to understand it from the perspective of taxability, that when a royalty received by a non-resident would be taxable in India, that is when a royalty received by a non-resident would be income deemed to accrue or arise in India. यहाँ पे भी same concept है, friends. Just like interest, here royalty can also be received from Government of India, from resident, and from non-resident. So the royalties received from Government of India, it would always be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in the hands of non-resident. These are all the persons who are paying that amount. Okay, don't think about these are the people in who income or income is being received by a non-resident in form of royalty. When a resident is paying to the non-resident a royalty, then that would always be taxable in the hands of non-resident, provided that resident is not paying the royalty for the purpose for which he have for the purpose or for utilizing any information or for utilizing any services for the which the business is being carried out outside India. Similarly, as the same line interest was, or for earning any income outside India. So if the royalty is paid, jiska royalty is paid for particular right or information which is being used for a business outside India or for earning any income outside India. In that case, that royalty would not be taxable in the hands of non-resident. Otherwise, a resident of India paying a royalty to a non-resident would be taxable. Just like interest, we saw that if the loan is being used for earning business income outside India or for earning any income from any source outside India, then the interest payable by resident would not be taxable in the hands of non-resident as income deemed to accrue or arise in India. एकदम same lines पे, एकदम exact same lines पे, if a resident is paying royalty which is payable in respect of any transfer of right or the use of property or utilization of any information, and that is being used for the purposes of businesses outside India or for earning any income outside India, then that royalty which is received by a resident to a non-resident would not be taxable. Otherwise, it would always be taxable. So पर्पस क्या है कि वो इनकम जिसके लिए मिल रहा है वो अल्टीमेटली कहाँ यूज हो रहा है, व्हाट इनकम इज गेटिंग जनरेटेड फ्रॉम दैट इनकम इज अल्टीमेटली यू हैव टू सी. देन नॉन रेजिडेंट के केस में a non-resident paying royalty to another non-resident would only be taxable if that information right, if that royalty is paid for an information or a right to use an asset or for transferring of any right in an asset, if it's for the purpose of a business carried out in India, or if it's for purpose of earning any income in India. So suppose the non-resident is paying royalty to another non-resident for a secret formula, okay? And now वो secret formula use करके he is producing a product in India. So now that royalty is being used for the purpose of business which is being carried out in India. So that royalty would be taxable in the hands of non-resident who is receiving that royalty as income deemed to accrue or arise in India. Had it been a case that that secret formula जिसके लिए the royalty is being paid, that formula is being used for the business outside India, then non-resident paying any royalty to non-resident would not be taxable. Similarly, it is used for a business outside India, then resident paying any royalty to non-resident would not be taxable. But interest or royalty की taxability, what is the difference? Interest के case में, when it is being paid by non-resident to another non-resident, it is taxable only when it is used for business purpose in India. But royalty के case में, if it is paid by one non-resident to another non-resident, it is taxable if it's used for business purpose in India or for any income in India. So that is the difference in both the scenarios, except being the nature of income. This is the difference. So किसी को कोई भी doubt in interest or royalty, take a moment and let me know, please. Rajiv Kumar, is it clear? Darshan, royalty is not necessarily the amount payable for usage of another property. That if you say the property can be if a basic patent, a basic invention, it can be anything. It can be information, it can be art of work. Royalty can be anything. Rajiv, exceptional part, simple सा part है guys. Deeming to accrue or arise in India तभी होगा जब non-resident को जो income मिल रहा है वो किसके लिए मिल रहा है, उस लोन या उस रॉयल्टी के उस अमाउंट के लिए जो अल्टीमेटली इंडिया को बेनिफिट करेगा. सिंपल. इंडिया को बेनिफिट कब करेगा? व्हेन दैट लोन इज बीइंग यूज्ड इन इंडिया, सिंपल, बाय नॉन रेजिडेंट फॉर बिजनेस or by a resident if it is not used outside India. Simple. Similarly, royalty is being paid to earn any income in India by non-resident. It can be from business, it can be from any source, or it is not used by a resident for outside India purpose. बात एक ही कह रहे हैं, but resident के केस में they are covering exception outside India, and non-resident के केस में they are covering as condition that it should be used in India. Simple. Point दोनों same है. Okay. Purpose is same. That the ultimate the जो भी ultimate income generate हो रहा है उसका ultimate expense whatever is being born, it is being born to earn an income in India. Perfect. Now we come to fees for technical service. उसका भी taxability एकदम same है. Exactly same as royalty. No difference. So another is called fee for technical services. Now, what is fee for technical services? Student, fee for technical services is as defined under section 9, subsection 1. Clause 7 is simple. It is a consideration. एक fee क्या होता है? Consideration होता है. Technical services provide कर रहे हो. Technical services is not technician. Technical services मतलब कुछ knowledgeable service हो रहा है in the form of skillable services है. Managerial, technical और consultancy services. अब I have to start a project. ठीक है, उस प्रोजेक्ट को एनालाइज करने के लिए I get some experts. अब उन experts को what fee I will pay, that is fee for technical services, because they will put in their technical knowledge. Suppose I have to start a building here, but I have to get a feasibility report of land, of other things, I have to start a factory here. Then I have to get what all the laws are there, whether the soil is feasible or not, whether the laws are there or not. So I will get some technical advice, technical knowledge, right? So वो उन services के लिए what fees is paid, that is called fee for technical services. Or I have a project which is to be managed, and उसको manage करने के लिए I am giving someone a fees, that is called technical service. अब like another example, recruitment. I have outsourced my recruitment project services altogether to a company. They would take care of the recruitment services. They would take care about the hiring. They would take care about the salary. Everything would be taken care by them. That is also called technical services. So technical services, fee for technical services, जिसको हम commonly कहते हैं FTS, is basically a fee paid for getting any managerial, technical और consultancy service. ठीक है, कंसल्ट करना, किसी को टेक्निकली कुछ टेक्निकल इंफॉर्मेशन, टेक्निकल नॉलेज सर्व करना, मैनेजरियल सर्विस देना, all of this is your fee for technical service. अब यहाँ पे we have to see कि when a fee for technical service is received by a non-resident, will it be taxable or not? See, if it is received in India, तब तो concept ही खत्म हो जाता है. But a fee for FTS received by non-resident would be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in India if it is received from Government of India. So Government of India paying for fee for technical services to a non-resident would always be a income accrued in India for the non-resident. Similarly, a resident paying fee for technical services to a non-resident, provided he is paying fee for the services which would not be used to earn business, or which would not be used to carry on business outside India, or to generate any income outside India. So now suppose I am a resident, I am making payment for fee for technical services to a friend who is in Japan. Now I am paying this technical services fee to understand a business project that I'm starting in Japan. Now this non-resident person who's getting this fee for technical services, will it be taxable in his hand? The answer is no. Why? Because the fee is being paid for a business which would be carried out outside India. So in that case, it would not be taxable in the hands of non-resident. These are the exceptions. Now, similarly, a non-resident paying fee for technical services to a non-resident would be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in India if the fee is payable in respect of services which would be utilized to earn any income in India or would be utilized to carry or carrying for any business or profession in India. Simple. Same just like रॉयल्टी बस रॉयल्टी एफटीएस एंड इंटरेस्ट में फर्क क्या है रॉयल्टी एफटीएस दोनों के केसेस में नॉन रेजिडेंट if paying the amount to another non-resident and that amount which is being paid for is used for earning any income or any business income, then the FTS and royalty is taxable in the case of other non-resident who is receiving it. But interest के case में the loan should be used for only business purpose. Then only it would be taxable. Loan used for other than business purpose to earn any other income in India would not be taxable in the hands of the non-resident receiving the interest. अब इसका एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं थर्ड केस का. A person has to start, a person in Japan paying fee for technical services to another person who's in Japan, but for a project which has to be started in India. Now, this fee for technical services to this person who is of Japan, who's receiving, even if he's a non-resident, would be considered as deemed to accrue or arise in India, and that person has to pay taxes in India. Ab samajh aaya? So whenever it's interest, royalty, fee for technical services, and you have to see the deeming provisions are applicable or not, you have to see who is the payer of those income, number one. Number two, where that income, where that particular loan, FTS or royalty is being used for. If it is used for the purposes of India, it would be taxable as business income in the hand. It would be taxable as income in the hands of the recipient. Simple. Clear? And the last part of the income deemed to accrue or arise in India is a concept which was introduced a couple of years back. They say any sum of money which is being paid by a resident Indian to a non-resident Indian or a foreign company would be taxable as gift and would be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in India if the amount exceeds 50,000. सबसे पहले sum of money. Example, simple सा बात है. I have my cousin who is a non-resident. He lives in Canada. Now, when I go as I'm a resident, okay, and I pay him उसकी शादी पे 1 lakh rupees as और से उसके बच्चे के function पे I pay him 1 lakh rupees as money, okay, as a gift. So this 1 lakh rupees, अब you will say कि वो तो बाहर मिला है, right? You will say that it is received outside India, it is accrued outside India, so this should not be an income of my cousin. But no, if a resident of India is giving any money gift, not property, not phones, not any asset, a money gift. If the resident in India is giving any money gift to a non-resident, non-corporate, non-resident or foreign company, it would be taxable as income of India if the amount exceeds 50,000. Simple. Okay? So that's all about what income deemed to accrue or arise in India. एक बारी quickly take 2 minutes and see where are the doubts. Then we'll do illustration number 8 so that to know whether all our concepts are clear or not. And then we will wrap up the class. 2 minute ले लो वो सारे provisions from section 9 subsection 1 to section 9 subsection 1 clause 8 तक सारे पढ़ लो please. Section 9 subsection 1 को समझने के लिए assume yourself as non-resident, assume that prima facie it is not appearing as income accruing in India. Now, whether it would be accrued in India or not, whether deeming provisions it would be accrued in India or not, is what you have to see. Business connections से हो रहा है, it is accrued in India. Any assets situated in India से हो रहा है, it is accrued in India. Any sources in India, it is accrued in India. Any capital assets situated in India, and it is being transferred, it is accrued in India. For services rendered in India, it is accrued in India. For services rendered outside India but being paid by government to Indian the employees, Indian citizen, it is accrued in India. For interest, FTS, and royalty, it can be accrued in India if received from government, if received from resident, and the royalty interest and FTS is not used for any purpose outside India, any purpose of business or for any income generating outside India, or if it's a royalty in FTS received by a non-resident to another non-resident, and the purpose for which is being paid is basically to be used in India, it would be taxable. Interest only when it is used for business purpose. And last, if any resident pays any non-resident a money gift of more than 50,000, then it would be taxable as income deemed to accrue or arise in India, and the entire amount would be taxable. ऐसा नहीं है, suppose I've given a gift of 80,000, only 30,000 would be taxable. नहीं. Once it crosses 50,000, the entire amount would be taxable. Hello, great. So quickly, let's talk about illustration number 8. Sorry. अब let's start understanding and see कि कितना किस पे टैक्सेबल होगा, रेजिडेंट के पार्ट पे कितना टैक्सेबल होगा, आरएनओ के पार्ट पे कितना टैक्सेबल होगा, और एनआर के पार्ट पे कितना टैक्सेबल होगा. ठीक है. ROR, RNOR, and NR. Okay. Interest on UK development bonds, 50% of interest is received in India. सबसे पहले, the moment it is received in India, it would be taxable in India for all the ones. 1 second. So the moment it is received in India, it would be taxable in India for everyone. But for ROR, पूरा amount would be taxable. So this would be 10K full, 5K for RNOR, and non-resident के लिए भी 5K. Then income from business in Chennai. Baba, business is in Chennai. It is income deemed to accrue or arise in India, and it would be income accrued in India, and it would be पूरा taxable for everyone. Then short-term capital gains on sale of shares of Indian company received in London. सबसे पहले, you see whether it is income accrue or arising in India. The answer is yes. Why? Because the capital asset is situated in India. Now, capital asset situated in India means it's a shares of Indian company. Now, even if it is received outside India or not, does not matter. So this 20,000 would be taxable for all categories of person. Now, dividend received from British company received in London. Now, first of all, is it income deemed to accrue or arise in India? Is it getting generated from India? No. Deeming provisions के according है? No, because the company is British. Had it been an Indian company, it would have been taxable for all. So it would not be taxable for non-resident. It would not be taxable for RNOR. It would only be taxable for my ROR. Long-term capital gains on sale of plant as Germany, 50% of gains are received in India. Now, सबसे पहले, again, first of all, accruing or deeming to accrue in India has to be checked. Now, capital gain on sale of plant at Germany. So it's not a capital asset situated in India, so it would not be an income deemed to accrue or arise in India. But since the gains are received in India, that would be taxable in India. So 20,000 taxable for RNOR and NR, and by default for my friend who is in ROR, everything would be taxable. Next. Income on, and this is how you have to ask yourself questions to see yes or no, yes or no. Multiple checkpoints लगाओ guys, तभी income tax easy होगा. Income earned from business in Germany, which is controlled from Delhi, 40,000 received in India. Now, business is in Germany. Business is outside India. Okay. Now it is controlled from Delhi. Controlled from India, RNOR के लिए taxability. 40,000 is received in India. Now, whatever is received in India is taxable, definitely. But for my RNOR, since the income, the business is controlled from Delhi, this 70,000 becomes taxable, and 70,000 by default is taxable for ROR. तो अभी तक जहाँ पे RNOR and NR की taxability एकदम same जा रहा था, here at this stage it got changed. Why? Because here the business is being controlled from India, even if it is outside India, it would be taxable in case of RNOR. Profits from business in Delhi, but managed entirely from London, does not matter. Business is in Delhi, simple, पूरा का पूरा taxable for all of them. Income, this is income from source in India, okay? Income from house property in London, okay, the the asset is outside India. Deposited in a bank at London, brought to India. Now, this is a situation, my friends, which is brought to India later. सबसे पहले कब मिला? कहाँ मिला? London account में. So it is not even received in India. It is not even accrued in India because the asset is not situated outside India. Receiving the outside India हुआ है, so it is not taxable in case of RNOR and my NR friends. It would be taxable only in case of ROR. यहाँ तक किसी भी point पे किसी को doubt? Why, ma'am? Why not this? Please explain it again. कहीं पे भी doubt? Darshan, this is a quite absurd question. Resident should be Indian, matlab a person is a resident of India. He can be a citizen of any country, does not matter. He should be a resident of India. Simple. I'm not talking he's a resident Indian. The word should be resident of India or a non-resident. मैंने फर्स्ट क्लास में कहा था नो वन वुड यूज द वर्ड नॉन रेजिडेंट इंडियन, ठीक है, एनआरआईज नहीं बोलोगे आप. यहाँ तक क्लियर चल रहा है सबको? श्योर, लेट्स प्रोसीड देन. Next, interest on debentures in an Indian company received in London. Receiving, chalo bhare, does not matter. Whether accrued in India, yes, because it's from an income from a source in India, so it would be taxable in India. It would, it's an income deemed to accrue or arise in India, even if received outside India. तभी मैं कही थी, prima facie आपको लगेगा it is an income outside India. But you have to see whether it is deemed to accrue or arise in India or not. Income from business in Germany, which is controlled from Delhi. 40,000 is received in India. So friend, here business is accruing outside India. Income is accruing outside India. Business is also outside India. So it's not an income which is accrued in India for a non-resident or for a RNOR also. But since the business is controlled from India, it would be taxable completely in the hands of RNOR. Remember, starting of the class, when in the previous class also we talked that ROR के लिए entire income is taxable, whether accrued outside India or accrued in India, whether received outside India or whether received in India. But RNOR and NR के लिए only income which is received or deemed to be received in India or accrued or deemed to be accrued in India is taxable. But what is the differentiating factor between RNOR and NR? RNOR के लिए, if a business income is outside India, but it is coming from the controlling which is happening in India, then RNOR के case में that income would be taxable. So in this case, in business Germany में, but it is being controlled from Delhi, so entire income would be taxable in the case of RNOR. Clear? Next, fees for technical services rendered in India but received in Japan. Does not matter. Services are rendered in India, received in Japan. Total everything would be taxable. But services would have been rendered outside India. and received in outside India, तब वो taxable कब होता? If it is used for service, if it is used for a purpose of business generation or any income generation in India by a non-resident, or if it is not used for any purpose outside India for business or income generation by a resident. ठीक है? Profits from a business in Mumbai managed in London. Simple भाई business है मुंबई में would be taxable completely 26,000. Income from property situated in Nepal received there. नेपाल का प्रॉपर्टी है वही रिसीव हुआ है. इनकम इज नॉट कमिंग फ्रॉम एन एसेट इन इंडिया, सो ओनली वुड बी टैक्सेबल in the hands of resident and not in the hands of RNOR or NR. Past foreign untaxed income brought to India during the previous year. Now this would not be taxed anywhere. अब भाई वो बाहर का इनकम था, उस साल का accrued income था, अब it got taxed or not does not matter. You have to understand what is the income accrued in India, simple, or received in India during the year. Income from agricultural land in Nepal as it is outside India, received outside India and then brought to India. Only in the hands of ROR, not in the hands of other, because it is not received in India because first time it was received outside India. Income from profession in Kenya, which was set up in India, okay, received there but spent in India. The moment the profession is there but it was set up in India, it would be taxable in the hands of ROR and RNOR. वहां पे receive हुआ तो would not be taxable in the case of NR. Same in the same line as we did for Germany business. If a business is controlled from India, even if the business is outside India, it is taxable in case of RNOR. Here, if the profession is in Kenya, but it has been set up in India, it would be taxed as an income for RNOR. Gift received on occasion of marriage. So this, when you will do income from other sources, you will understand that gifts are not taxable if received on marriage. So it would not be taxable in any situation. Okay. Interest on saving bank deposit in State Bank of India, सबके केस में taxable होगा 12,000 पूरा. Income from business in Russia, controlled from Russia, only in the case of resident, not in the case of non-resident or RNOR. If it would have been controlled from India, then it would have been taxable in the case of RNOR also. Okay? Dividend from Indian company, taxable in case of everyone, no matter where it is received and how it is received. And agricultural income from land in Rajasthan, वैसे it's taxable income, but as per the provisions which you will be studying in the next class, you will get to know that agricultural income is not taxable. अब उसके बाद वो ATTTA क्यों किया है उसको अभी थोड़ी देर के लिए भूल जाओ. Abhi understand the taxability of ROR, RNOR, and NR. These are all part of your concepts which you will be seeing in your coming chapters. Anyone has any doubt? For a resident Indian, first of all, resident Indian word कोई use नहीं करेगा. The person would be called as resident of India. And when you're talking about individuals, you will always either classify them as ROR and RNOR. अभी मैं अगर नहीं टोकूंगी, so this would become a habit. So that's why I'm saying always use ROR or RNOR if you're talking about individual residents. If you're talking about other than individual or HUF, then say resident of India. Resident Indian word is wrong. So, ma'am, for resident of India, foreign income will get taxable in foreign country. It may get taxable, Rahul. It may get taxable outside India also. तब वहाँ पे provisions आएंगे, देखेंगे वो बाहर भी tax pay करेगा, यहाँ पे भी tax pay करेगा. Then we will see credit मिल जाएगा और as per the DTAA agreements or your treaties, maybe only one country be taxed, but that is at a very later stage. आप फॉरेन कंट्री के बारे में मत सोचो. फर्स्ट Since you're starting to understand tax, just think from the Indian tax perspective. Kavita Darshan, this is for you. On the screen, please. When a income is from business or profession outside India, we say it's an income not accrued in India, correct? Because uska source is outside India. Simple. But a controlling factor plays a very important role. Why? Because I gave an example of Mr. Ambani the other day. He is sitting here, the brainchild is sitting here and controlling the businesses happening across, right? If Mr. Ambani is a resident, anyway, everything ROR, everything would have been taxable. But since if he's in RNOR, then also such businesses which are accruing outside India, that is, they are there, but since they are controlled from India, they would be taxable. Okay. Now we come to profession. Any income, if income is derived from a profession set up in India, then in that case, it would be taxable as income, which is taxable in the hands of RNOR also. Agar profession is there, NR के case में तो question does not come because NR के case में only income accrued or deemed to accrued and received and deemed to receive is taxable, right? But for RNOR, there is extra taxability factor that when a profession can be anywhere. But if it is set up in India, if its setup was in India or if its setup is in India, then in that case, it would be an income of RNOR. Now, suppose a friend whose professional setup is in India, he is an interior decorator. Now, if he goes to Kenya to provide the services of interior decorator, that income which is being generated would be a taxable income for an RNOR because वहाँ पे extra taxability factor है from the scope of total income perspective, right? और ROR के लिए तो otherwise भी taxable होती. So simple. And accrue to India में नहीं हो रही. It's not getting accrued. I'm not saying it's getting accrued in India. But from the scope for RNOR, income which is coming from business controlled from India or income which is coming from profession which is set up in India, उन cases में these two incomes are also taxable in the hands of RNOR only. That's why Kenya वाले case में profession was set up in India, so it would be taxable in RNOR. Otherwise, it would not have been taxable. Okay, had it been a simple case that income from profession in Kenya, तो आप खाली ROR के केस में taxable करते, RNOR and NR के केस में नहीं करते. But it's coming from a profession in Kenya, or the profession of which is set up in India, then you will tax it in India for ROR also, generally, naturally, right? And for RNOR also. Got it? Chalo. So great. I hope the entire chapter of residence is clear and scope of total income is clear. Income deemed to accrue is clear. But again, deemed to accrue वाला concept बहुत जरूरी है. वो answer karega for you to understand the scope of income. So if scope of income concept comes, if your income section 9 is not clear, okay, what is deemed to accrue? So you will not tax most of the incomes in the hands of non-resident, right? So deeming to accrue is important to understand. So please focus on the concepts, focus from the perspective of India, focus from the perspective when understanding section 9 for non-resident, and you will get, or an RNOR, you will get all your answers correct. So if a resident ROR is working in foreign company, income is received in foreign, it would be taxable in India because for an ROR, all the incomes are taxable. But if an NR would have or RNOR would have been working in foreign company and received income there, then it would not be would not be taxable. Okay, so my best wishes to all of you until we meet next. Please focus on the concepts, and I hope you love income tax as much as I do. Thank you so much.